the right. A lot of hands up, so we'll get the mic to you. Go ahead, sir.
Billy, Brady Ackerman, CSS. Can you talk about what you've seen from Dayton's bench? They showed a lot, played a lot of guys. Obviously, your bench has been good all year, but they have a deep bench.
Yeah, they're going to play 11 players, and I think the thing that makes them unique and special in a lot of ways is they've gotten great production from a lot of different people, a lot of different points in time in the game. Whether it's been offensive rebounds, been a loose ball hustle play, somebody knocking down a three, somebody making a steal and getting them out on the break. And they've got a lot of versatility. They've got a lot of depth, and they use their depth to their advantage.
Front row, center.
Mark Wicker, Orange County Register. I know any loss that ends the season is very difficult to deal with, but is our final 8 losses the toughest because of what lies ahead, or what you could have gotten to?
I think what happens, I don't know if there's ever any easy exit out of the tournament. I think because of the quote-unquote nicknames, the Sweet 16, the Elite 8, the final, people determine of like where it's successful or not successful. I can tell you it was just as painful in 2000 walking off the court losing a national championship game, as it was losing last year in the Elite 8. So I don't know if there's any easy way, because I think everybody this time of year is putting their heart and soul, and everybody this time of year has been totally committed to each other and their team. So, I think sometimes perception-wise, when you take that next step, it means, okay, that everything's great. But, also you look back and say, you'd be asking me if we lost after, Coach, you were so close. How do you feel? I'm not so sure there's ever an easy way to exit a tournament like this.
Left side, 5th row. Go ahead.
Yeah, Coach, I asked you what I asked the players a little bit earlier. When you're playing that so-called Cinderella and they've got captured a little bit of the public imagination and the media attention, and they're on an emotional high themselves, what's been your pattern in coaching your teams to get prepared for a George Mason, a Florida Gulf Coast, and now a Dayton?
Well, I think that whole terminology is not given by us. It's given by a lot of other people. We don't look at anything like that. I think those make great headlines and people talk about that. But if you want to sit down and really, really evaluate Dayton's team, or even George Mason back then, or whoever it's been, Florida Gulf Coast, they're good teams. Dayton is a very, very good team. You don't do what they've done the first 3 games, beating Ohio State, beating Syracuse, and then beating Stanford if you're not a good team. So I think people try to create that kind of perception, and it's really an untrue perception. They are an outstanding team. They went through a very, very difficult time early in their conference schedule, and they've become a great team. I think it's very similar to what we went through to start our season with all of our adversity. It brought us closer together. I think their adversities brought them closer together. So we never look at anything like that. It's always about the opponent, what they do, what we have to do, getting prepared to play. We don't really get wrapped up in how it gets labeled of who we're playing against, what the seeding are. It has nothing to do with anything. Once the ball gets thrown up in the air, the best team is going to win in between the lines.
3rd row. Mike's right behind you. Go ahead.
John Johnson, I work for Newsday in New York. As we get into the conference tournaments and the NCAA tournament, it feels like the timeouts get longer and longer and longer. How does that affect things? If it does it kind of negate teams with more depth? Does it mess up the flow for you? Any of that stuff?
No, it definitely changes. You're also talking about a longer halftime. Halftimes in a normal game are 15 minutes. Now you've gone to 20. I think that the media timeouts now are maybe 2 minutes and 20 seconds. So, I think the one thing you've got to realize as a coach is you've got time. You got time at halftime. You got time during those timeouts. I do think when the game is going on and there is not a stoppage of play, like for instance, yesterday, there was a stretch there where both teams played up and down the court with not really any media timeout, and I thought both teams for that moment playing were a little bit gassed. We needed to sub, they needed to sub. I would agree through the length of TV timeouts, it becomes difficult maybe to, per se, wear down teams. There is a lot more rest time, and it is different this time of year than maybe it is during the regular season.
Right side. Go ahead.
Antonia English, Tampa Bay Times. Billy, yet again, you're facing an opponent that has one of your former assistants on it. Just wonder if you could talk about that. Is there any inherent advantage, disadvantage to that? And also, in terms of your guys who've making this fourth straight appearance, do you have any, because they've been so good about staying in the moment, do you have any concern about them, even though they said they're not, feeling like this is a hump that we've got to get over and having that psychological thing going?
Well, again, Tom has done did a great job for me. He worked with John, obviously, at South Alabama, then Arkansas, and then now at Dayton. Obviously, there's going to be some familiarity. It's been a while since he's worked, for me and at Florida. But he's done a great job for me, did a great job for John. I'm sure he's doing a great job for Archie. But I think the teams are going to end up preparing, and the teams are going to have to go out there and execute and play. With regards to what you're talking about, the one thing I think for me in looking at the past is you can draw maybe some kind of comparison or draw some kind of thing of what happened in the last 3 NCAA tournaments. But the reality is last year's team is without 3 really good players, Rosario, Boynton, and Murphy. The year before that was out without 2 really good players, Beal and Irving Walker. This is its own separate team. This team has not played in the Elite Eight last year. This is in actuality our first Elite Eight as a team. Now, Patrick Young and Scotty Wilbekin and Prather and some of those guys were here last year, but also a lot of guys weren't in the roles they're in right now. Rosario started, Boynton started, Murphy started. So our team is really different. And I think over the last 3 years, each year we've played at this point in time, our team has been different. And our team is clearly different than it was those years. So we've got to play this game with the mentality that this is really all that matters. This is what's in front of us right now. And we've got to be and understand that there's a process you have to go through for 40 minutes to put yourself in a position against a really good team.
Go to the 5th row, and then we'll move up here to the 2nd row.
Matt Schwady, Flyer Hoops. Coach, after Dayton's win at Ole Miss, Andy Kennedy said he hadn't seen ball movement since your national champion teams back-to-back. Do you see the similarities, in particular, the way that they share the basketball?
I think every coach tries to do that. Every coach wants ball movement, player movement. I think Dayton does it exceptionally well. They've got a good understanding of what they're doing on offense. I think you can tell that Archie has really emphasized that. They're extremely unselfish. Because of the numbers they play, anybody's capable of having a big night for them because they are so unselfish. I think the one thing I respect about the way they play is the ball always finds the open man. And sometimes if you're open on a given night, you're going to get a lot of really good looks. And I think you always admire watching a team like that play because they play the right way, they play unselfishly, and they play together.
2nd row, Pat.
Billy, can you talk about Patrick was very frustrated last night, did not, as you said, didn't get in the flow in the game. You've had guys who've been able to bounce back and have big games in the next game, just what he's got to do, especially on the boards.
Yeah, I think I would have liked to have seen him handle that situation, to be honest with you, a lot better than he did. I thought he got way too wrapped up in trying to explain that he didn't travel, explain that he didn't foul. And in reality, those calls are not going to be changed or overturned. They don't give him a red flag like the NFL. They can throw out there and they can, go to the monitor. He needs to move on and play, and that to me is the greatest sign of maturity, growth, is when you can really still stay focused and play when maybe you're going through an internally frustrating moment. Obviously, Patrick wanted to be out there. He picked up 2 fouls. The 2 fouls he picked up were not his fault. He had a good post move. I didn't have a good angle. I don't know if he traveled or not. The officials thought he did. He made a good jump hook in the lane. I thought one he missed in the lane. But we just need him to come and be that defender that he's been all year for us.
Left side, go ahead.
You stated how there's never an easy exit out of the tournament, but do you feel like there's added pressure when you have a special unit like this group, which is senior-led?
Yeah, I think every coach would say, this time of year you have a special group. It takes a special group to get to this time of year. Dayton's a special group. I think we're a special group. Teams left playing are all special. There's a reason that you're there. So that's why I was saying earlier, for any team, it's never an easy exit out of the tournament because this is an exciting time. It's a lot of fun. You're playing against an uncommon opponent. First time generally you're seeing an opponent during the course of a season. So I think everybody can kind of say the same thing this time of year. You have a special group of guys, you know, and all of us are probably different in our own way and played our own identity. But I think this time of year, every team's got a specialness and a uniqueness to themselves.
Fifth row in the middle.
Keith Rad, WUDR Dayton. Coach, some initial concerns on the film for Dayton that you look at right away. What would beat you that this team can do well?
Well, I think to get to this point in time of their season, you have to do a lot of things well. You can't just do one thing well. They do a lot of things very well. They're terrific in transition because they have a lot of different guys that can handle it, put it on the floor, make plays, and then they've got really good vision. They're very unselfish. They got good spacing, and they make the extra pass. So transition defense can beat you. They can beat you with the three-point line, and they've proven that against a number of teams so far. This NCAA tournament, they're a terrific shooting team, and they shoot it from a lot of different spots on the floor. I think their front court. I think Kavanaugh is a really underrated player. I mean, I thought he played terrific last night against Stanford. He gave him a great post presence. He rebounds. He comes up with a lot of loose balls and hustle plays. That's another way. I think defensively. They help each other. They shut down gaps. They scramble. They rotate very well. I think there's a lot of things that Dayton does very well. I don't think you sit there and say, what is the main concern? Their team is a major concern because of how good they are.
Right side will move up a row.
Billy Tom Corin from ABC. How do you keep an 18, 19, 20-year-old group of guys focused, like they keep focused on what they're doing without wandering off in the peripheries and realizing exactly where they are right now? It seems to me like they're like in a trance, and now they're in the Elite Eight, but they don't really realize it. How do you do this?
I mean, it's a challenge every day. It's not just for me. It's probably for everybody. The only thing that I would say that we really try to do more than anything else is to focus on what has bearing in our performance. Anything else really doesn't make a difference. There's nothing else they should bring to the table, mentally, emotionally. I mean, because it has nothing to do with anything. Really, all this is about, and I think for our team this year, what it's been about is, it's the next game. Who are we playing? What do we need to do? How are we going to play together? And how are we going to play connected? Now, we haven't always been like that. I didn't think that I think I was pretty clear after the Albany game. I didn't feel that way. It's a battle. Now, when you have some older guys that have been through it, there's a growth and a maturity of being able to move from one thing to the next. And I think that's the challenge, is being able to move to the next thing. That's hard sometimes. So it's been a good group for me to work with as it relates to that kind of stuff.
Other questions for Coach Donovan? Okay. Thank you, Coach.
Thank you.